Hi, in this video lesson, we're going to talk about plain text passwords which are stored in Active Directory. And we're not referring about the passwords stored in Active Directory NTDS, but simply passwords that may be stored in scripts or user attributes or anything else in Active Directory in plain text. And that is something that usually is left behind certain administrators. In often cases due to lack of policies, in other cases just negligence, but it is something that happens in real life and unfortunately happens too often. It is probably the most common way for me to escalate on penetration testing engagements by finding on a share exposed password. And you would be surprised if I told you how many times it is a password of highly privileged account, most cases domain administrator. So the first part that we're going to talk about is passwords that are stored in scripts that are located in shares. So what I would normally do is I would recommend using an offensive tool, part of PowerSploit, called Invoke Share Finder, which is a PowerShell script that you can execute in your environment. It will scan every single computer and identify all the shares which are exposed on that computer. And what is really interesting about this specific tool is that it will also list shares which tend to be hidden. So it will also show hidden shares. What I normally do is, there are multiple approaches for this, of course. Some automated tools, some are more manual. I would rather prefer taking the manual approach because I want to also look into other data, not just the one that the script identifies, while browsing through certain shares, especially those shares that contain software or installation scripts. Common ones usually are sysvol and netlogon, because administrators tend to put a lot of logon scripts in there, and then they usually specify an account that they want those scripts to execute with, and then the password of that account is stored into the login scripts. My common approach is that I'll use the find string command, pass a few arguments to it, specify the word that I want the find string command to be looking for, and put it in strings. In this case, the word is pass, which stands for password. Of course, it needs to be replaced with PW and any other variations, maybe something different in your language if it's different than English. And then specify the location of the share that you want to scan. So if we take a full example, on the second line of the command, we'll see that the command I have specified is find string. I'm looking for the word pass, and I'm looking at the share file server 01 into the folder scripts, and I'm specifying any name for the file that ends with the extension .ini. Sorry, ini. Well, ini is not really the only extension that we'll be interested into, and here's at least the very basic list of those that you may consider quite interesting. So that would be .conf, .config, .cmd, .bad, .vbs, .ps1, maybe .cs, .js, depends on what kind of files you might have in your environment. But these are really the core basic ones, and I tend to find them to be most fruitful, providing me with some passwords. What I see in many organizations is that medium or large scale organizations where they have multiple users being administrators on many servers, there's usually a programmer or one administrator who creates a few scripts, puts them in a folder called script programming software or something, and then at a later stage another administrator might put software in that actual software for installation in that folder, and then create the folder as a share, and that share will stay essentially until someone turns it off, which in most cases really is never. So that will not only expose the software which is there for installation, but also the previous scripts that may contain these credentials. And here's an example of, if we run the command and look for batch files, it will identify that a batch file in the directory called scripts is identified, and it contains /password. And in this case, what you're going to notice is that the password for this service account SVC Omada is rather, to some extent, lengthy and hard to guess. As such, it is service user for running web stuff. Service user for running web stuff. It contains uppercase, lowercase, numbers, and it's relatively long. But because it's exposed in plain text, an attacker can essentially just go grab it out and use it as is. So that is the flow in here. The other problem that is often encountered is credentials stored in Active Directory object attributes. For example, in this case, on the picture, we'll see that the password is stored into the description of the account. So in this case, I'm using a offensive tool called sharp view, and I'm passing a parameter or an argument get domain user. I'm specifying some account name to be Slavi. So it will extract information regarding the account called Slavi. And for those of you who are more familiar with the Active Directory command get ad user, this is the equivalent in a hacking term, which is created with LDAP in the backend. It doesn't require the Active Directory module to be installed to use this command. You just need the executable or the PowerShell version of it. So in this case, on the screen, we can see that the description contains pass and the password being welcome123. Now, this is wrong in many ways. First one is that plain text password is exposed, and of course it's indicated with the word pass. I've often discovered passwords also into the information attribute, but also in some group descriptions. So someone creates a group called ISS users, and then in the description of that ISS user group, he'll put the names and the plain text passwords of the ISS user account. And of course, that is really bad as well. This information is available to every domain user, and that is the main issue with it. It's not only domain admins who can go and read it. If you have a domain user, authenticated user in fact, which will be a computer or a user, you can go and extract all the information about all users in Active Directory, which will contain these plain text passwords as well. I have provided two links at the bottom, which are my go-tos, so to speak, which I would normally use to scan for this issue in user attributes. They'll scan both the description and the info for containing pass, PW, and some different variations of those. You can add, of course, custom ones if your language is not English, or if you think that users might have different ones other than pass. Something that makes to you, you can really customize it to your liking. And at the end of this slide, I will create a small demonstration where I'll just show how we can execute the scripts to identify these issues in the environment. Now, it's really hard to prevent these passwords being stored in scripts and Active Directory objects. First, because maybe they exist there for so many years that everyone has forgotten about them. We need to go actively scan our environment and check whether we have any of these being exposed or not. Then it's very hard to change the mentality of someone who has been a system administrator for 20 years to not do something. It's nearly inbuilt into that person. You can give him many trainings and many sessions. Likelihood of a person being a person is still very high. So really what we should be doing is scan your environment as often as you can. I would suggest maybe once a month would be a good interval to look and try to identify any of these issues, because in reality you shouldn't have any of them, and if any of them are detected, you can create alert such as automated email or a message in one of the messaging applications, anything that you might desire to indicate that there's an issue that you need to look into. So of course, even though we might not succeed, we should anyway go and try to teach our employees to not store plain text passwords, because some of them will actually listen to this, and it will at least decrease the likelihood of this issue existing in our directory. So let's move into the environment, and we'll just execute one of the two scripts which I showed earlier, just to show you how easy it is to execute and try to identify this plain text password that may be stored in the directory. I am now connected to the environment, and I will show you how we can execute the PowerShell script from the slides really easy. So first, we'll perform invoke expression and just use any hacker related command that we can in our benefit as well. This is a very common technique to execute, for example, tools such as Mimikatz, which you can run them directly into the memory, and the likelihood of them triggering an antivirus product is very unlikely. Of course, EDR products and next generation antiviruses are kind of different, so they will probably detect that something is touching LSAS at least, but because this will run into memory, if it's a traditional antivirus product you have, it's most likely not going to detect anything happening. Although in this case, the script is not going to reflect as malicious. So to execute the command, we'll do new object net.webclient.downloadString. This is a command which will download whatever is located into the URL that we provide. I had already copied the URL of the search user.ps1 file, and I'll just go forward and download it. So it downloads and it executes directly out of the blue for us, which is ready. And it actually comes back stating that it found one user called Slavi that had description containing pass, and it was set to welcome 1. It was really that easy to go and scan those user accounts. It could be that in some of your users, you might have legitimate reasons to contain the word pass, like in pass through or some other wording, where you can actually whitelist those into the script and then just output the ones that you're really interested into if something new pops up that you're not aware of. So one of the things I didn't discuss into the slides, which I really wanted to outline, is how bad it actually is to use passwords such as welcome1, because I think with high confidence I can predict what's going to be the next password the user is going to set. It's most likely going to be welcome2. So having this pattern and it might really end up being quite a disadvantage in defending your environment. You shouldn't teach your users into using weak passwords such as this one, which are not just guessable, but they're increasing with the number. We'll talk about passwords a lot at a later module, so I'll leave everything for there.